All right, we're back still in the First Amendment. So notice right at the beginning, we've been talking about freedom of speech. We talked about freedom of assembly. The first, the first prohibition that they put in the First Amendment was that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, you know that we love to name parts of the Constitution. We call this first part the Establishment Clause. No law respecting an establishment of religion is called the Establishment Clause. Prohibiting the free exercise thereof is called the Free Exercise Clause. Those are both freedom of religion, but they are two different things. Establishment Clause means that government is not establishing an official religion or sponsoring or supporting a specific religion, or even religion over non-religion. Free Exercise Clause gives people in America the freedom to worship in the way that they choose, to follow their religious practices without the government coming in and criminalizing the action. So there are two different things. One of them is about what the government does. The other one is about what people can do. So let's explore the freedom of religion, which is collectively both the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. Freedom of religion, just like freedom of speech, just like freedom of assembly, is not absolute. Here are some examples. There was a federal law that was passed, and it said that it was illegal to practice polygamy. And at the time, in the late 1800s, there was a specific religion. They no longer do, but there was a specific religion, Mormonism, the Church of Jesus Christ, Church of Latter-day Saints, that did practice polygamy. It was a big part of the religious belief that you had to have as many people in your family as you could, because you went into heaven as a family. So you wanted to have as much protection as possible, and to have to take as many people that were all part of your family into heaven as possible. So here the Supreme Court said that the conviction of a Mormon man under this federal law was permissible. Now here he is practicing his religion. All he's doing is doing what his faith tells him to do. They said it was okay to restrict and criminalize that action. And in that instance, the Supreme Court, kind of convoluted decision, said that in certain instances, the government can interfere with religious practices. You are free to believe whatever you want to, but there are some things that your religion says that you should do that we just cannot allow you to do for whatever reason. So they upheld this restriction on religion pretty early on. So now let's talk about prayer in schools. So we are going to first address the Establishment Clause. So everything that we're going to talk about for the next few minutes these are going to be Establishment Clause cases. If you choose this essay for the midterm, I am looking for a definition of what the Establishment Clause is, and then a list of cases that are Establishment Clause cases. What the case stood for, what the case held. The year is always great because that sometimes has some bearing on why the court decided that way. So let's talk about the first prayer in school case, because school is a governmental entity. Public school is a governmental entity. And so the question became, can the government tell children that they have to do certain religious practices? Or is that a violation of the Establishment Clause? Now, up until the Engel versus Vitale case was heard in 1962, there were many, many instances of school districts doing exactly that. In this particular case, the school had written, or the school district had written, a mandatory prayer. It was a non-denominational prayer, but it was a prayer. And they were forcing students to recite it at school. A parent filed suit, and when the case got to the Supreme Court said, when you are requiring young children to participate in something that has religious undertones, you are establishing religion at a public place. That is government establishment of religion. It is not allowed. Since 1962, prayer, mandatory prayer in public school became unconstitutional under the common law. The next year that the court heard the Abington School District versus Schempp. Now, a lot of times we just call this the Schempp case. SCHEMPP, 1963. What this school district was doing, they weren't writing out a prayer. They were requiring, the whole state was requiring students to recite the Lord's Prayer. Now, the Lord's Prayer is in the New Testament. So it is distinctly Christian. And the court again said, okay, y'all didn't write this one, but if you are requiring it, if students are getting in trouble because they won't do it, then you are establishing religion in a governmental place, in this case, a public school. No. And so since 1962, mandatory prayer written by the school was a no-no. Since 1963, public recitation of the Lord's Prayer in school was also unconstitutional. Let's fast forward a little bit. 1985, the state of Alabama had passed a law that gave the students a minute for, and the words are paramount here, silent prayer or meditation. And the Supreme Court said in 1985, now Earl Warren was long gone, 1985, that would have been Rehnquist. I think Rehnquist would have been the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And they said, because you're saying the word prayer, that is still unconstitutional. We need our schools to have complete neutrality toward religion. And if you remember, I said that a law is not unconstitutional till the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional. So up until that case in 1985, it was perfectly okay to have a moment of silence for prayer or meditation. After that, and they incorporated, they said no more. Now, I am making some assumptions. When I chose this picture, I was making some assumptions. I was making some assumptions that this was a public school and that these students are, I see a bus, I see cheerleader uniforms at a football game or some kind of sports event for the school. The First Amendment affects everyday life in a lot of ways. Um, and so this is the question. If these students are voluntarily participating in prayer, if they're not being forced by any school official, is it okay? Now, when I graduated from high school in 1988, I was the class president. I was also student body president, and I was fourth in my class. They were going to find something on that program for me to do. And my official duty during graduation was to do the prayer and say it on the paper, Madelyn Petty prayer, and it was a good one. It was a good one. That was prior to this decision in 1992. So what I had done was not unconstitutional because the Supreme Court hadn't said it was unconstitutional yet. In 1992, they said that that was unconstitutional. To have a prayer, an organized prayer at an official school function after 1992 was also a violation of the Establishment Clause. In 2000, the court went even further. There, they said student initiated prayer at any official school event violated the Establishment Clause. Even though it wasn't organized by the school, it wasn't sanctioned by the school, there wasn't a member of the clergy that was doing it, it is a violation of the law to have student initiated prayer at an official school game. Now I know that you are in school right now. You went to Crowley High School, you went to Martin High School, and you saw prayer at soccer games, you saw prayer at football games. If you went to North Crowley, they hired a clergyman to come and pray with the football players. At least they were 3 or 4 years ago. And you were going, how? If the Supreme Court said that you're not supposed to do that, why are we still doing that? Well, I can explain that in Texas and in many southern states, we find open defiance of common law all the time. There are a lot of people that just don't believe that that is the right thing to do. And if nobody in the district is complaining, then we do all kinds of things that Supreme Court has said very clearly we should not be doing. That's one of them. This is one of my favorite stories. This is an actual, I call them run-through signs. That's what we called them when I was young. And now they have these Velcro signs that you don't have to buy. But when I was in school, and I think this case was maybe 95, these young ladies at Coots Independent School District, so a public school, made a sign for the football players to run through, and they put a scripture on it. If God is for us, who can be against us? And in case you weren't exactly sure that that came from the Bible, they put the Bible reference for you. Romans 8:31. Romans is in the New Testament. So they put the sign up, there was a parent complaint. The school district told them, yeah, you can't, no, you can't do that anymore, and ordered them not to put any more scriptures on any more run-through signs. There was a movement that started in the 90s, however, that started to make this argument that just because you are not supporting religion, you also cannot block people who do support religion. And so it became kind of a freedom of speech argument that just because you don't like it, you can't restrict other people from saying it if that is what they believe. And that every one of these cheerleaders felt was okay with it, so they should be able to express themselves. They should have the freedom of expression to explain their religious beliefs. Yeah. So, the governor at the time was Rick Perry, and Rick Perry wrote a letter that he had published in several newspapers supporting the cheerleaders' rights to say, freedom of speech, what they wanted to say. And then the Attorney General, his name was Greg Abbott, he's now our governor in Texas, uh, also came out and said that he supported the cheerleaders' right to say what they wanted to say, even if what they wanted to say was religious. For the rest of that year, I know those cheerleaders every Friday pulled out signs with a different scripture on it. So we have had this really uneasy battle over First Amendment rights between freedom of speech and freedom of religion. The Establishment Clause says simply that the government cannot favor one religion over another. The government cannot support religion over non-religion. When the concept was written, it was written primarily, the idea came from people like Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, both of them deists. So they believed in a higher power, but they did not believe in organized religion. They were Masons, both of them, and both believed that you kept your government and your politics separate from any religion. Now, in Great Britain, they have the Church of England. Many people throughout the decades and the years have been beheaded for not subscribing to the official religion of the church, whether it was Catholic or under Henry VIII, it became the Church of England because he separated himself from the Catholic Church because they wouldn't let him the Pope wouldn't let him get a divorce. So he just created his own religion, and that became the official religion of England. It was very important to the people that were advocates for a Bill of Rights that they be separate. Well, what about if you have Christmas displays? This video, which I don't think that I'm going to be able to get to play yet, is about the city of Athens, Texas. And in Athens, one year or for several years, there had been a display on the county courthouse grounds of a nativity scene. So there was baby Jesus, there was Mary, there was Joseph, there were some animals. And it was placed there by an organization from town. They would set it up, they would place it there, they would take it down. And one year they were sued, and by the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and they said, how is this separation of church and state if you have an obviously religious symbol on government property? Now, the Supreme Court has been all over the place with this question of Christmas and religious observances by the government. And there is not settled law even today. They're just the Supreme Court has just danced all around it. They haven't made a ruling. Every time they make a ruling, they're like, "We're just talking about you. We're not talking about everybody else." Um, the some of the rulings say that as long as you have some secular symbols, so you can have a creche, you can have Jesus and Mary and three wise men, as long as Rudolph and Santa Claus are there too. Um, it is always even better if you can have some other religious observances, like maybe have a menorah, which is a religious symbol for Hanukkah, which goes on at the same time, um, and even Kwanzaa, which happens during the that season as well. So if you can have a nice mix, then you are not establishing a specific religion. And that is the way that most cities get around having any kind of display during the Christmas season, which is, let's face it, very, very Christian observance, specifically and exclusively a Christian observance. There have been instances where the Supreme Court said some religious symbols are not going to work, like courthouses that displayed the Ten Commandments, even when the Ten Commandments was there with other historical documents, and basically it was a display about origins of law. Even then, now it was a 5-4 decision, but even then they said that is a violation of the Establishment Clause to have this obviously Judeo-Christian symbol in a courthouse. So they can't do it. There have been so many instances of schools that had 10 commandments, and then somebody told it and they had to take them down. In 2010, the Supreme Court seemed to be a little wishy-washy, because in this instance there was a cross that was on a World War I memorial. And so the question was, is that an establishment of religion on government property? And in another close decision, the court said it's okay, because that is a symbol that some of the people that are being memorialized found important. It is okay, and all religious symbols are okay. So they said that that was constitutional. 2014, there was a complaint about local government bodies like city council meetings, school board meetings, starting with a prayer. Again, religious observance, government, seems like there is an establishment or support of religion over non-religion. But they supported it and said that it was okay. You go to a Fort Worth City Council or watch a Fort Worth City Council meeting these days, Arlington City Council, they're going to almost always start with a prayer. Now, usually they will have different clergy, so it's not one person. But in the United States House of Representatives and the Senate and at the Supreme Court, they have prayers before they start the sessions. So, it is not, just like everything else, it's not absolute. So let's take a step back and talk about how not absolute the Establishment Clause is. It is a case by case basis. It is really clear that there is some recognition and support of religious activity by the government, even though that is the wall has holes in it. The wall of separation has holes in it. The accommodation doctrine says that it is actually okay for government to aid religious activity as long as no preference is shown toward a particular religion. And if the assistance that is given by the government is of a non-religious nature. Now, of course, that means that that's leading us to a case. The case was called Lemon versus Hertzman. It was heard in 1971. It was a challenge to a couple of state laws that on their face seemed very neutral. They simply said that they were going to give a state supplement to math and science teachers so that math and science teachers, no matter where they taught, could be guaranteed a certain salary. It was to encourage people to become math and science teachers. Now, they clearly stated that this was to make sure that Catholic schools could have good science and math teachers. But in the case, we got from that case, and we're still talking Establishment Clause. So we've talked about a whole bunch of cases, and we're still talking Establishment Clause. Something called the Lemon Test. You cannot write an essay about the Establishment Clause and not talk about the Lemon Test. Here's what the Lemon Test says. If the government is going to be providing resources to a religious organization, the policy that they are supporting, the government is supporting, has to be non-religious. We can think of all kinds of programs that religious organizations do that are not religious in nature. Hospitals, schools, clothing closets, sports activities, those are some that come to mind. I mean, Catholic charities, good heavens, you can get dental services, you can get your taxes done, you can get health referrals, you can get counseling. So there are a lot of activities that are done by religious organizations that are not specifically religious. And so you pass that one hurdle. The second hurdle or second prong of the test is that the effect of the policy has to be that it neither advances nor inhibits religion. So you could not donate money to a mission because the stated purpose of the mission is to do something kind, but to lead people to your religion. So that would be advancing religion. If that was what you were seeking money for, it would be denied under the Lemon Test. The third prong of the Lemon Test is that it cannot foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. Cannot foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. You do not want the government to be in the business of promoting a church, promoting a religion, promoting a religious activity. What most religious organizations do, like Catholic Charities, they have a completely separate organization, and they have different staff, they have different books, they have different rules and bylaws, and they keep it completely separate. You have to do that if you are a religious organization. You're going to have to keep your books separate. You're going to have to track where the money went. You're going to have to show that there's no correlation between the preacher and his wife getting a new car and you getting some funds from the government. So as long as you can meet those three, it's non-religious purpose, the primary effect is not to advance or inhibit religion, and it doesn't get the government involved in an excessive entanglement, then you can meet the test. Now, under this test, the states lost. I want to say that it was Connecticut and Pennsylvania. They were very Catholic, had a high Catholic populations, and they stated that they were trying to promote teaching and support teaching in Catholic schools. And so they failed the test. But we use this all the time when we are making a decision about funding and support. But we have the Zellman versus Simmons-Harris case in 2002. Another close decision, 5-4 decision, where the Supreme Court actually upheld an Ohio law that gave students vouchers to attend any school, even if that was private or religious school. And Texas has tried many times to institute some type of voucher system. It has been found to be a violation of the Texas Constitution. But right now, vouchers, as long as you can use it to go to any school that you want to, have been upheld to be constitutional. So that is Establishment Clause. I'm going to stop and keep separate the Establishment Clause from the Free Exercise Clause. So I'm going to stop here.